Hey everyone, the average Halo gamer here today to review the Halo Cookbook. This review is broken up into 3 parts in this video. The first part will be giving my initial impression of the book, both when it was announced as well as what I think now that it is in my hands. In the second part, I will be making 9 recipes from the cookbook and reviewing each, and then the last part will be my final thoughts on the cookbook and whether or not you should buy it. So I will admit, my first reaction when this book was announced was... why? This stemmed from 2 primary things. One, I did not know at the time that there was this whole world of cookbooks based on video games, shows, movies, etc. But also because Halo doesn't really have any history of food. I knew about the Bob's Burgers and Final Fantasy XIV cookbooks at the time, and those made sense, but I could not figure out why Halo. Now to be clear, none of this was anger. I did not think it was a waste of time. I did not think that making the book was a distraction for 343, because frankly that is absurd. This book has no more of a distraction for 343 than any toys, Mega Block sets, or anything else outside of the game. And even so, this would not have been worked on by the people making Halo Infinite. This would be managed by someone else within 343. That being said, I did not rush to pre-order this, but since this was announced, I have bought a few other themed books and liked them, so I figured why not give this one a shot. When it first arrived, it felt really well put together. The art was beautiful and I enjoyed reading the flavor text on the recipes, but what really stood out to me was the variety in the ingredients used. The recipes ranged from more traditional American to Chinese, Thai, Indian, Mexican, and Italian. And for those recipes, the author did not go simple. Some of the ingredients may be hard to find. It doesn't feel like just your average cookbook in that sense. On the cover it says, "Recipes from across the galaxy." And while obviously the galaxy part is just part of the story, it really is a varied cookbook from around Earth. I was also really impressed that it had a section on some of the harder to find ingredients. There are some interesting things on the ingredient list, like I'm not really sure why condensed milk is there, but that is the exception on the listed ingredients that most probably have never heard of. In the back it also has a very helpful section of dietary considerations with a list of all the recipes and which ones would suit different diets. It isn't the most comprehensive dietary list, but it is something that I'm sure many will find helpful. On the topic of ingredients, it is worth pointing out that many of these recipes have ingredients that many may not already have at home. For myself, I already cook a lot of Mexican, Indian, and Thai, so I had most of the spices necessary, but be prepared to need to do some spice shopping if you don't cook some of these meals already. But as it says in the book, this is a great time to build up your spice cabinet and experiment with some flavors you may not normally cook. So this book arrived on Tuesday. I am going to be spending the next 5 days making 9 recipes from this cookbook. Tuesday through Friday I will be making dinners, then Saturday I will be making breakfast and a dessert. Now I am by no means a professional chef, so I will be showing what I am cooking, but I am not putting on a cooking show. I won't be giving measurements or precise instructions for each recipe. What I will be showing is a sped up cooking process for each meal, to get an idea of what you're getting yourself into if you get this book. At the end of each recipe, I will also review it and give some recommendations on what I may change in the future. These combinations are also not the most balanced meals, but I am committing to cooking only from this book for the purpose of the video, so keep that in mind. Let's start with what I made on Tuesday. For dinner, I made the Spadehorn bits, which are turkey meatballs in a sauce, and the sweet potato fries. 2 different recipes that I combined to make a meal. The Spadehorn bits are in the vending machine section, which is meant to be single quick things, not a full meal. The sweet potato fries are from the Have Samoa section, so almost like a diner section. Both of these recipes are marked as easy. Now, both of us were blown away by these recipes. The bites were almost like wontons, but without the wrapper. They were absolutely delicious. The sweet potato fries were savory instead of leaning sweet. Normally when I see sweet potato fries, they are either with a little bit of salt and honey mustard, or occasionally covered in powdered sugar. I've never had anything like either. Both of these will be regular items that I make. I do think there may have been a bit too much salt on the fries. Not much, but I will likely tone that down in the future. I also wish there were more veggies with the bites. There were carrots and onion in the meatballs, but in the future I will likely mix in some broccoli and some carrots with the sauce. I will also likely not do this combo again. Individually they were great, but they did not really mesh for a single dish. Likely instead of sweet potato fries I may do mashed potatoes or rice, and then save the sweet potatoes for a burger or something. But ultimately Tuesday was a major win for this book. It had a fantastic first showing, and I cannot wait to cook more from this book. Wednesday night I made the Chiliquiles. Now I know traditionally Chiliquiles is a breakfast item, but every time I've had it in the past it was for dinner. This one was clearly meant for breakfast since it was under the gym dandy, which is all breakfast or early morning items. But I decided to make this item for dinner. Now I was a bit more cautious going into this one since I make my own chiliquiles with homemade red sauce that is really good. So I kinda already had opinions on what this should be before making it, but I wanted to keep an open mind since I knew the dish can vary a lot and this was a completely different sauce. Unfortunately, I screwed up a couple times while cooking. First, I burned some of the tortillas since this recipe had me make homemade chips. Then, because of that, I ended up just going to the store and buying chips instead of trying that again. I don't blame the recipe for that, just my discomfort with frying stuff. Even with that, I was still pretty happy with the recipe. I wasn't quite as blown away by this recipe as I was the other one. There was not anything particularly unique about this recipe, like I knew what chilaquiles was, but I was still happy with it. I don't think I'll make the recipe again as it is, but I will be for sure making the sauce again to make enchiladas. On Thursday, I made the curry puffs and Freyas tea. The tea was an iced Earl Grey tea with raspberry and blackberries. This was really good. It had a nice sour to it thanks to some lemon juice, and we are already planning on keeping this in the fridge regularly now. After making it, we went and got the ingredients to make another batch, so I highly recommend this one. I don't think I would make any changes to this. Depending on my mood, maybe I would use a little less lemon, but most of the time I won't. This is perfect as it is. The curry puffs were interesting. I think my puff pastry sheets were smaller than she intended, since I was only able to fit about half the filling she called for, but they were still really good, just a little bit more complicated. These remind me of Indian samosas, which I love. There is no spice to them, however, but I can easily figure out what I need to add later. So I think in the future I'll add some spice to these, and maybe find bigger layers of puff pastry, but otherwise I want to keep these regularly available. Also, I do want to mention that these keep in the freezer and fridge very well after cooking, so I will likely be making bigger batches of this and just keeping them in my freezer for when I want a snack like this. On Friday, I made the Tallarines Verdes, which is a spaghetti with pesto. Now, I know I just butchered that pronunciation, but I tried to get it as close as I could. I also made the GAUSS orange soda. I'm a bit conflicted on the spaghetti. However, I kinda went into this not really being a huge fan of pesto to begin with, but I wanted to experiment. So I don't want to call it bad. I just don't think the taste is something that I'm into. My partner, on the other hand, really liked it, especially after he added some Parmesan. So if you like pesto, I think this will likely be a great recipe, but it was not for me. However, it was also really easy to make, which I appreciate. Now, the orange soda was interesting. This had to be made the night prior, and I wasn't actually able to try it until Saturday. It was pretty easy to make, but I was surprised when I went to check it in the morning that it was almost gel-like. I was expecting it to be thicker, but not that thick. I also love orange soda. I've been making an effort to drink a lot less soda, but when I do, I tend to go for orange or another fruity flavor. This is not orange soda like you would get from a bottle. This really is its entirely own thing, especially since it doesn't have a lot of the artificial flavor that soda normally has. It is really good, but I can't quite put my finger on how to describe the flavor. Obviously orange, since there is a lot of orange juice and zest in it, but I guess a sweeter carbonated fresh orange juice would be how I would describe it. I would not change anything about this in the future. I don't know how often I'll be making it since it has a lot of sugar, but it was worth the effort, and I want to try the blast soda next. Saturday is where I get to explore stuff that would not really work for dinner. For breakfast, I made the French toast. I was not really sure how I was going to like this. My relationship with French toast is all over the place. I've had some that I loved and some that I hated. It really is something that can go wrong so quick, and I think largely due to the egg. Now, I have also never made French toast myself, so this was going to be interesting. I did slightly burn it while I was cooking, which hopefully I would not do in the future. But these were really good. But the star of the show was the cream on top. It was an amazing orange and vanilla cream that was very sweet and flavorful. Now, make no mistake, this is a heavy meal and a decent amount of sugar in it, so this would not be a regular thing to make. But combined, it was really good. I think in the future the only thing I would change is the bread. I had a lot of issues of the bread breaking apart, so I may use a French baguette or something like that in the future when making this. Finally, the last thing I made was the Samoa brownies, which are in the Have Samoa section. Get it? Okay, moving on. These were marked as medium, but I did not find them too hard. Really, it was just a lot of steps that could go wrong, but the actual things you were doing were mostly simple in my opinion. I think they came out really good. A bit more bitter than I would prefer. I much prefer sweeter milk chocolate, so we'll likely use different chocolate chips next time I make this. I also may omit the marshmallow, not because they were bad, but I think it just makes it harder to eat. It also feels like the marshmallow is there to add some sweetness that I don't think will be necessary if I use different chocolate chips. If you like darker chocolate, I think you will love this. Everyone else, I think, will love it with a minor improvement. So with all these recipes done, how do I feel about the cookbook? Ultimately, I'm really glad I got it. There are some truly fantastic meals like the Spadehorn bits and the sweet potato fries. A couple of the others were okay, but not great, but that is normal for a cookbook. It may just be that those don't appeal to me, but others may love them. Now, the real question is, should you get this book? I think that boils down to what it is that you're looking for. If you're just looking for a Halo collectible that you can put on your shelf, maybe occasionally look at, but really not do anything else with, it being primarily a conversation piece more than anything else, I would recommend this. It is beautiful and well put together book. It has some nice flavor text and a story going through it. If you're looking for a cookbook that you want to cook from and while you're eating or presenting the meal you think, I'm in Halo, this book won't do that, but it was never going to since Halo is not associated with food. But if you're looking for a cookbook that has a nice varied selection of recipes, recipes that have some flavor text with Halo so you can feel like you're in the world while you're cooking a bit, but then you can present the meal to non-gamer friends or family and not get weird looks, this cookbook is great. At the end of the day, I highly recommend this cookbook, and I'm really glad it exists. Thank you so much for watching. This is a bit of a different type of video. I did not really intend to do cooking stuff when I was originally thinking about this channel, but I figured it makes sense. If you like what you see and you want to see other Halo related content, please consider liking and subscribing. You can also check out my website, averagehalogamer.com, to see where else you can follow me, including on Twitter. Until next time, this is the Average Halo Gamer.